Welcome to a new episode of the Opening Bid Podcast. I'm Yahoo Finance Executive Editor Brian Sozzi. Like I always say, this is the podcast that will make you a smarter investor, period. And of course, Opening Bid sponsored by our friends at Vanguard. And we bring you this episode from the big, beautiful NASDAQ in Times Square. Real special guest here today, CSX President and CEO Joe Hinrichs. Joe, good to see you. Last time I think I saw you was when you were running the ship or operations at Ford way back when, and now I think we look the same. But
yeah, well, you know, I got my hair's a little grayer, but you look good. You look good. You look good.
It's all hairspray. But good to see you here. Of course, now you're leading CSX. Got here, in September 2022?
That's right.
So I know a lot about railroads. I think I do. I don't know as much about railroads as you do. Level set for investors. What is CSX today, and what do the operations look like?
Sure. I mean, CSX is the largest revenue railroad east of Mississippi. Basically, the way the railroads are set up in America, there's two Class 1 railroads in the west, BNSF and Union Pacific, and then two in the east, Norfolk Southern and CSX. We're the largest in the east. Basically, the way we're set up is the Mississippi River is mostly dividing line, so the interchange points happen in Chicago, Memphis, New Orleans, East St. Louis. And so we operate in the 26 states east of Mississippi, 2/3 of the U.S. population, about a little $14.5 billion of revenue, but importantly, a good, all the things you take for granted, all of us take for granted every day, wouldn't move without the railroads.
This had to be, I don't know, brainer, but you had to have had some knowledge of the railroads while you were working at Ford. Don't we ship auto parts across this country on trains?
Yeah, we do, especially automobiles for sure. Actually, my second job at Ford Motor Company was running material planning logistics worldwide, which included all transportation, logistics, scheduling, inventory, which of course included the railroads. So I got to know the railroad CEOs, because we spent billions of dollars on moving automobiles and parts. But it's interesting because now pretty much the only thing that moves on rail are finished vehicles. Those auto parts now are pretty much all trucked, except for from Mexico perhaps, up to the Midwest. So that's something that's interesting that's changed over time. We could talk about that. But yeah, I got to know the railroads. As a matter of fact, in 2003, I was invited by Norfolk Southern, now our competitor, to speak to their board of directors about auto business and rail and how we could help get better. So it's fascinating how the world turns.
Norfolk Southern didn't know who they had in the building. I mean, what was going on there?
Yeah, well, it was 20 years in the making, but we're in there.
What is an operations person such as yourself? I think back to what you were working on at Ford, helped launch many vehicles around the world. Now that you've settled into CSX a couple of years in, what operationally have you been working on?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about railroads is it's all about operational discipline and process. You think about it, it's a closed network. You have all these yards. You're taking in all these containers and all these cars from all over the place. And you have to have discipline to run the processes, because if the yards get jammed up, if trains don't run on time, as we all say in our society, then everything gets congested. And it's so critical to orchestrate the locomotives, the engineers and conductors who actually run the trains, and then all the cars and building the consists and et cetera. So much operational process discipline is required. And importantly, we have 14 unions. It's we're 198 years old. There's a lot of complexity to the management union relationship and the labor part of this, because 90+% of our employees are unionized, which of course goes back to my experience in the automobile industry as well.
What, you have under contracts with the labor unions? What were those negotiations
We do. As a matter of fact, they are 5-year contracts. They were just coming due at the end of December. And we took a historically new approach to this last summer. We actually said, why don't we try and do this early? Because historically they've been very acrimonious.
They always wait till last minute.
Last time around, it took 3 years to get a deal. So we're 3 years into 5 years, and ended up going to Congress to get voted on to not allow them to strike, to enforce a deal that the Presidential Emergency Board recommended to both company and the unions. That's how complicated these relationships have been over the years. And so 14 unions, 16 different agreements. We're down to one now. We have them all done. We had half of them done early, which had never been happened before. And that's trying to change the culture and change the relationship of the railroad industry so that we can get better service to our customers, ultimately be more efficient and safe as well.
Railroading, I guess I don't have to tell you this, it is a hard gig. So what do you have to put in these new contracts to help support these workers?
The hardest thing about the railroad industry is actually it's an outdoor sport, and Mother Nature isn't always kind to us. Matter of fact, the hurricanes last year really hurt our network. But what you put in the contracts really is just the opportunity to work together. And what's important to employees, of course, safety. Their scheduling and their work-life balance, because we're a 7-day operation, 24 hours a day. We don't take the holidays off. I mean, the railroads never stop. And so how do you orchestrate schedules and orchestrate a process that can help people with their lives. You want it to be more efficient, but obviously people want to earn a fair wage as well and be well compensated. So you're trying to work all together, but you really want to work together to serve the customer, because railroads historically, the last couple of decades, have not grown volume. Coal volumes have declined. Other intermodal volume has increased, but generally speaking, not a lot of growth because the service levels weren't really that good. When I was at Ford, when I was president of Ford Motor Company, we were moving away from rail to try and get better service from trucks. But our challenge to our team is how do we work together to provide better service to customers so we can grow, because better for everyone in society if we do put more work on the rails. It's safer, takes trucks off the roads, a lot of congestion. The taxpayers pay for the roads, we pay for our own infrastructure, so it's better for all of us as taxpayers. It's also, frankly, more efficient and better for the environment.
I want to get into what maybe some signals that I think your business may or may not be sending right now from an economic standpoint.
Yep.
But what does the future of railroading look like in this country? Does the next generation, if you're 15 years old right now, do they want to be working on a railroad?
Well, there are those fans out there. Trust me, we see them everywhere we go who just love trains and love the industry. But to the point, working with your hands, outdoor sports, 7-day operation. These are the types of operations that it's more challenged to get people.
Well,
to work.
there's like a historical trucker shortage. I've been hearing about this for the past decade.
Or mechanics and technicians in automobile dealerships, right, for service. These are types of jobs that over time, our younger generations have moved away from. We need to get them back in because they're six-figure jobs, good benefits. Our business actually still has a pension.
So if I wanted to work at CSX, I can earn six figures.
Yes, right from the start. Once you're trained, takes a little while to get trained, but with a pension and with all kinds of great benefits. But you're also going to have, a 7-day operation, 24 hours a day. You're going to be some challenges sometimes with some of the holidays and things. So there are trade-offs, but importantly, we need to get people back in love with railroads again, because what we have in North America is a gift. I mean, it happened because of how we grew as a nation, but our freight rail system in North America is the envy of the rest of the world. We have the best freight rail network in the world. Now, others have better passenger rail systems than we do, right? China, Japan, Europe. But we focused as a growing nation, go from east to west, and the railroads made that happen, and so we still have that. And so getting that capacity, using it efficiently, safely, better for the environment is what we're all trying to do.
You ever ride the New Jersey Transit? What a dog.
I have not ridden the New Jersey Transit. We don't do passenger trains.
Don't send this guy comments. It has nothing to do with the New Jersey Transit. No Amtrak, right? Nothing to do with Amtrak?
No, we don't. Obviously, Amtrak run independently. However, that's part of the challenge of all this, because Amtrak runs on our rail network. It's a private network. We control it. We keep it up. We spend the money to all the infrastructure, about $2 billion a year, just keeping our network up and running and safe. But Amtrak is allowed to run on our tracks as well as the other Class 1 railroads. So that forced marriage relationship is an interesting one for sure.
All right, so you heard it for poor Joe. It has nothing to do with New Jersey Transit and everything going on there in Amtrak.
No, thankfully they settled their agreement.
Yeah, we'll take that offline. So let me ask you about, there's so much going on in this economy right now. There's tariffs, there's a push by the administration to build more stuff in the U.S. What is the view of the economy from a freight business like CSX?
Yeah, because one of the cool things about being a railroad is we see the economy.
Forward indicator.
We are. I mean, I think even Warren Buffett once said if he could only have one source of data, he was on an island somewhere, he wants the rail shipping data, because we're an early indicator. So what we're seeing, interest rate sensitive parts of the economy, autos, housing, are not reaching their potential, let's say it that way. Autos are still in the 15, 16 million SAR, and we were 17 million SAR 4 years before COVID, right? Housing is, we all know about the housing situation. So definitely interest rate sensitive parts of the business. Having said that, industrial development in our part of the country, Midwest, Southeast, is booming. We have 600 projects right now that we're working on in our network to bring new businesses onto our network over the next several years. We had 37 that have started this year, gone into production this year already. So that's exciting. That's part of this whole tariff, post-COVID realization of how we should have our supply chains, but also obviously the stuff going on. We think a bubble's coming through because of all the trade tariff things on the ports.
Was it the import cliff, they call it?
Yeah, I mean, what happened was we had a bunch of stuff come in early, and now we've got a 90-day pause. So more stuff's coming, but there was a gap there. So freight vessels, declined across the waters for a little bit. Who knows where it goes? But of course, when that hits the ports in big numbers, it can cause congestion. So we're watching that very carefully. But the rest of the economy, when it comes to aggregates and minerals, so like construction is still strong, right? Grain harvest was good this year. Export coal volumes are strong. Coal business is good. So there are parts of the economy that are good, but obviously we're feeling the pressure on some of the interest rate sensitive parts.
The merchandise inside of your trains that you transport, is it, if it's a car, if it's food, whatever it is it inflationary?
Well, not when it's on railroad. So the transportation piece isn't inflationary because we're lower cost than trucks and a lot more efficient. But having said that, if more and more things come to the United States, which would be great for our business and great for jobs, depending on what it is, it could be inflationary, right? I mean, because if it's made today in Mexico or China, it'd be more cost to produce here. But logistics costs will go down. So you have to look at the total cost equation. But as far as our contribution to this, we're getting more efficient, while we do have some pricing that happens every year, normally a little bit above inflation, we can be more efficient and help with this equation.
All right, hang with us, Joe. We're going to go off for a quick break. We'll be right back on Opening Bid. All right, welcome back to Opening Bid here at the NASDAQ in Times Square. Of course, Opening Bid sponsored by our friends at Vanguard. Having a great chat here with CSX President and CEO Joe Hinrichs. We're talking about the state of the economy as seen through the eyes of a railroad. Is this economy still one that is growing? Is it growing strongly? Is it growing slower? Is it a recession? How would you characterize it?
Well, we see volume growth this year.
Still
low single digits. So it wouldn't anything that you would
That was the guidance you put out in April.
It is.
Okay.
So we still see growth. A lot of that's coming from what we would call bulk train business, grain, coal, some of that aggregates, construction related. We see lots of potential, but not yet realized yet in autos and some others. Metals, steel and aluminum have been depressed for the last couple of years. The way I would characterize it is this. The service economy has been strong, continues to be strong. The industrial economy has been in a recession for the last couple of years. And we're more tied to the industrial economy because of all the, raw materials being removed than finished things being produced. So if we can see more industrial growth, production growth, that would be a big deal to the economy and for CSX and to the railroads as well. But right now, that's been pretty stagnant. It's not as bad as it was the last couple of years, so that's a big potential here. But we still see a little bit of growth. A lot of that is in intermodal traffic. So containers moving across the country, whether coming into the ports or just moving in. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's a booming economy, but it's certainly growing. It's not in a recession, at least from the demand data we see. Every week we look at our order fill requests, so the demand coming in from our customers, and we don't see a decline. Not big growth, we don't see a decline either.
Is the economy set up structurally to handle bringing jobs back to America? What would that mean to a railroad such as CSX?
Well, it'd be great for us because, a lot of times when these companies want to build new manufacturing facilities or build any facilities, they want access to rail because it's lower cost, better for the environment, more efficient and safer. So that's good, why we have 600 projects underway on our network right now. What do they normally look for? They look for power, manpower, so electricity and utilities, human resources, land and access to logistics, and those are the main things they're looking for, which we can help, and we're a big part of that industrial and economic development for states. But do we have the workers? I mean, one of the challenges that we are going to have, I think, in the future, and we're all talking about, is if immigration's down significantly, which obviously all the work going on in the southern border has been great. How do we make sure we have the workers for the future as well? We're not having enough babies in this country, if you read all the articles, and so
Elon's have enough babies.
Yeah, I'm beyond that point. We had 3, and we're blessed. But importantly, do we have the human resources to do that? And how do we manage that going forward?
As someone that worked, has spent really before CSX decades in the auto industry, how hard is it to build an auto plant? I think that is something getting lost in this trade discussion, that a Ford or a GM can take a plant that is in Canada or Mexico and poof, flip a switch, and they're making cars in a year.
The way
you've been on the ground building plants.
When I was in for 3 years, I was running China and Asia Pacific. We built 10 plants in that region. It takes 5+ years. If you think about Ford's been building a plant outside Memphis, Tennessee for a number of years. The Hyundai plant just opened in Savannah, outside Savannah. That was announced in 2019 and just opened in early 2025. So you can kind of get a feel for the time frame. Now, the supplier plants can open much sooner than that. The vehicle assembly plants are huge and they take a lot of time. But you're talking 5 years, roughly, give or take, to make that happen. Now, thankfully, the administration is working hard to make sure the permit process and everything is easier and better and more efficient. That can help because permitting can be a big part of this. You have to find the land. All those things are part of that. So if you have all that lined up, you can go faster. But still, you're talking 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, so it's not overnight.
It's not overnight, but there is capacity already existing in the U.S. So there are a number of manufacturers who have plants running on 1 shift or 2 shifts where they could go to 2 or 3 shifts, for example. And you're seeing that. Some of the announcements have already come out. GM has announced an increased production at a truck plant in Indiana. I mean, Ford just recently added a shift to their plant in Wayne, Michigan. So there's things happening to add, use existing capacity and make more volume in the U.S., which ultimately good for CSX, actually, because we move a lot of those finished vehicles.
What advice would you give to your fellow CEOs trying to navigate all this uncertainty?
Well, businesses don't like uncertainty, as you know, and so obviously having resiliency is important, but you need to scenario plan. You need to look at different scenarios, say, what if this happens, what do we do? If this happens, what do we do? And you need to basically just keep running the fundamentals well, because at the end of the day, the most efficient, the best quality, the best run businesses will not only survive but prosper in this environment. But you need to be opportunistic, because things are changing pretty regularly, right? I mean, we had the tariffs and they came off 90 days and et cetera. So you really have to be nimble and you have to really be looking at things every day and respond accordingly.
Has this caused any operational headaches for CSX?
It's caused a little bit of issues with around, the volume movements for mostly the ports. So you had a lot come in the first quarter. Now you have a lull coming for the next few weeks, and then more coming. As we understand it, the Chinese manufacturing plants kept producing. So there's volume ready to come to the U.S. now that this 90-day reprieve has been given on the tariffs. So that, most businesses like stability, right? We handled it fine. There were no issues with CSX, but just managing that fluctuation of volume can be a challenge. But so far, so good when it comes to handling that so far this year.
What is it like going, I guess, head-to-head with Warren Buffett in a Burlington Northern?
Well, the good news is we don't really have to go head-to-head because the way we're structured is Norfolk Southern and CSX compete in the East, and BNSF and UP compete in the West, and we are partners. We interchange. So we interchange a lot with BNSF and UP in places like Chicago, New Orleans, Memphis. So they're more partners than they are competitors, which is great. They're bigger on the West because part of it's tonnage and mileage, and so they have a lot more mileage because a lot of stuff's coming west to east. But importantly, if the rail industry works better together, including all of the Class 1s, including the 2 in Canada, we can help this industry be better holistically, and we'll all benefit because we can get more volume on the rails, take some off the roads. It's better for all of us.
Well, Mr. Buffett recently said, I think it was his annual meeting, quote, BNSF is not earning what it should be. Is it something specific to them, or do you see that in your operation?
Well, and we would say that's true for CSX the last 2 quarters as well. I mean, we were arguably the highest margin railroad in 22, 23, and most of 24. And then the hurricanes hit us, and then a bunch of other things happened. And for the last 6 to 8 months, we've been in recovery mode. So last couple quarters, our earnings are disappointed as well, to be candid about that. But last 4 weeks, we're running a lot better, and we're getting ourselves. We have 2 major projects. We lost, basically the way our network is, there's 4 main north-south routes in the east. One comes through the I-95 corridor, one's down through East Tennessee, then Nashville, South Birmingham, Alabama. And we lost one of those 4. The hurricanes took out 8 miles of track, 40 miles damage. It's costing us over $400 million to replace it. So we don't have that channel right now, and that's really causing some disruption in our network, as addition to some other things happening. So I can't speak to BNSF's issues specifically, but typically when you look at the railroad business, it's about efficiency of the operations. How fluid is the network? How are things moving? Do you have the cars moving? Because interesting thing about the railroad, the better you run, the fewer cars you need on your network. It's counterintuitive, because your cycle times are better and you don't need as many cars. But when you run slower, the customers put more cars on your network, which actually slows it down. So you have to get your network running fluidly to get cars off so you can run more fluidly and run faster. And that's all the work that we all have to do.
I always think back to that deal that Buffett made for Burlington Northern. Like, you look back and you're like, wow, how did that happen? Do you ever see something like that ever happening again, where the railroad gets taken over?
Well, I think it could happen. I mean, obviously investors can, privatize, or they can, we're all, higher valued organizations because we're very profitable. We generate a lot of cash and a lot of returns to our shareholders. I mean, our market cap's, in the high 50s. It should be higher than that, but that's a reflection of what's happened the last several quarters.
And of course, you check that stat on the Yahoo Finance platform. Go ahead.
Exactly. But I mean, the reality is there's only so many of these things, and we have the physical assets, and there's not going to be new railroads built in the United States.
No.
So what we have is existing. It's very competitive, very efficient, and very important to the economy, as we saw why Congress wouldn't intervene. And so those are good things. Now what we need to do is continue to run better railroads so we can get more volume, generate more profits and returns for our shareholders, but also get more volume for society and for the economy. And that's the focus we all have. But yeah, I mean, there could be, there's been some talk about, is there anyone left to merge with because of competition? Basically, I have 2 in the East, 2 in the West, and 2 in Canada of the Class 1 railroads. So I think we have a lot of regulatory oversight for obvious reasons, I think. And so I think it'd be challenging to have something beyond that, that setup today exist.
All right, so stay tuned on that front. And in the last 2 minutes, we always love to get a hot take from our guest. I understand you have quite the car collection.
31 years in the auto industry. I did buy a few cars over the years.
So what are your babies in there? I'm a car guy, so I get it. Like I'm in your camp. I maybe don't own what you own, but maybe I could strive to own that someday.
Well, one of the things that we have in common is we remember the 2017 Ford GT model launch.
Yes, very much so.
And I have VIN number 3. The first 3 that we built in that Ford GT, the carbon fiber, great vehicle. We built in red, white, and blue race livery of the car we ran at Le Mans in 2016 and won and beat Ferrari again. Ford versus Ferrari 50 years after the first time that happened in '66. And so I'm fortunate to have one of those 3, red, white, and blue.
You don't drive that. That just
I have 300 miles on it, and which is, I think, 299.
You're not driving it.
I've driven it. Well, I drive those 300 miles, but it's basically giving people rides.
Wow.
People want to ride. You take a little ride, take a photo, and then you put it back away. I have an 05 GT as well, which is the generation that we did before that, VIN number 5. I've got a few other fun vehicles as well. But I was the champion of bringing back the Bronco into the lineup. So I have actually 4 or 5 Broncos, an original '74, and some of the new ones, including a Bronco Raptor, which is fun. So yeah, I'm half Italian. My mom's a Finelli, and so once I retired from Ford, I could buy a few Italian cars as well, which was pretty fun.
And that's it for the latest episode of Opening Bid, of course, sponsored by our friends over at Vanguard. As always, continue to hit us with those likes on YouTube and those thumbs up on all the podcast platforms. I learned a ton from your feedback. We'll talk to you soon.